Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you're new here, and today we are talking about Reckless by Lauren Roberts, which is the second book in the Powerless series, with Powerless being the first book and a 1.5 kind of novella that sits in between the first two books called Powerful, which is a Dina story, and Adina, if you don't know, is our main character's best friend. Not gonna say anything more than that without spoiling anything. And this video is non-spoilers, so we definitely do not want any of those here. This is a spoiler-free zone. So honestly, I don't really have too much housekeeping other than this is no spoilers. I do also have reading vlogs for Reckless, Powerless, as well as a no spoilers Powerless vlog, which I will link here as always. And without further ado, let's just dive right in. Let's just get into it. So when we pick up in Reckless, we essentially pick up where Powerless left off. Pei is on the run. She's really going through it. Like, homegirl is not okay. She's not doing well at all. Kit has sent Kai to go retrieve her, if you will, and bring her back to him. And kind of what ensues in this book is a little bit of cat and mouse at first before Kai eventually does catch up to Pei. And what ensues after is fairly interesting. And then by the end of the book, we do get back to Kit, where more revelations are dropped. I know that was a really bad summary, so I apologize, but I mean, if we're just laying it out there, this book is Kai chasing after Pei, catching up to her. We learn a bunch of stuff in between, and then we go back to the kingdom where Kit is awaiting Kai and Pei. That's pretty much that in terms of summary. So let's get into the plot. So in terms of plot, there was no plot. Well, no, I shouldn't say there was no plot. There was very little plot, which was kind of disappointing because I feel like the first book definitely had more of a plot going on, and this book just kind of didn't. I feel like a lot of what happened in Reckless happened for one of two reasons. The first being that it happened to serve Kai and Pei and their story, or it answered a question that we the readers had from the first book. That's kind of the vibe that I got from the very little bit of plot we did get in this book, because so many things happened where after I read it, I would just be like, what was the point of that? There were so many things that I just didn't understand the point. I will also say there's not a lot of fantasy elements in this story either, because if you remember, Pei is on the run. So she leaves Ilya, and I believe her first stop is Dor, which is a neighboring kingdom across the desert. And that's where a lot of the ordinaries have fled to. So we're talking about people who don't have powers. So Pei doesn't really have powers, other than her being a psychic. And Kai is unable to borrow anyone else's powers because no one has any. So in terms of fantasy elements, there were none. And that's okay, because I didn't even really get kind of that feel from Powerless. Like, I didn't go into Powerless feeling like it was going to be this mega epic fantasy romance. It really felt like fan fiction for the Hunger Games, if I'm being honest with you, but that's neither here nor there. But in this book, there's really not a lot of fantasy elements. The romance, however, plays a huge part in this story. So I think if you are someone who likes romance, you will like this book, but I think if you're someone who's reading these books for more of maybe like the fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian type vibes that we got kind of in the first book, you're not really going to get that from this book. There are some like dystopian kind of sci-fi-ish type vibes, but in terms of fantasy vibes, it kind of went out the window with the plot. The only other thing that like really bothered me about Reckless was how freaking repetitive it was. Kai and Pei, especially Pei, it felt like they were just repeating the same things from the first book, and it was just like, I already read this. Why are you spending pages, literal pages, not paragraphs, pages, dedicated to regurgitating things we already know, things you've already written, things we already know the characters are feeling? We all read what Pei went through. You don't have to keep telling us. It just, I don't know. And I know one of my bigger gripes with Powerless was the writing, and I kind of had hopes that Lauren Roberts would improve her writing with the second book. I know I said no spoilers, but spoiler, she doesn't. It's a little disappointing. It's a lot disappointing, especially because I feel like I've put so much time into reading and digesting and understanding these stories that it's kind of insulting as a reader when even the author can't stay consistent with their own characters and plot and what have you. So in terms of plot, there really isn't a plot. There's a lot of romance. There's not a lot of plot. There's a lot of romance. There's not a lot of fantasy. There's a lot of romance. There's not a lot of better writing. So do with that information what you will. Okay. So remember how a few moments ago I was stating that this book is very romance heavy? Well, it is. A lot of this book focuses on the love story between Kai and Pei. But it is infuriating because neither, mostly Pei, I shouldn't say neither, but mostly Pei just refuses to acknowledge their feelings. And it's so frustrating. There's one scene a little bit closer to the end that reminded me so much of Carden and Jude from The Cruel Prince. And I can't. Like, can we stop writing fantasy romance books that sound like other fantasy romance books? The way the love story kind of develops in this book is absolutely so frustrating. It is so frustrating to read because it's not even a push and pull. Powerless was a slow burn. It was a candle that just kept burning. Like, we got no relief from the smell of this candle. Whereas Reckless was like the candle blew out, so you're trying to relight it, but the wick just won't catch. It's so frustrating. And not only that, it was exhausting because remember how I mentioned that a lot of things were repetitive? Another issue that I had with Powerless was that Stabby is not a personality trait. Where Stabby was in Powerless, knife to the throat is in Reckless. And also, Pei constantly threatening to hurt Kai and then just not doing it was like, can we chill? Like, can we chill? There's a lot of barking, not a lot of biting. I need her to like tone it down, please. Like, I'm begging. Something I also didn't understand going kind of stepping away from Kai and Pei, something I also didn't understand was Kit's role in this story. So as we've established, Kai and Pei are out in the world. They're out in the world doing their own thing. And Kit is back at the castle kind of dealing with the aftermath of everything that happened in Powerless. But the few chapters we get from him, like, I'm embarrassed for him. And he's a fictional character. Like, this isn't a good look for you. It's not a good look. But to be honest, without spoiling anything, Kit's chapters are just really depressing and I don't understand what the point of them were. I also don't understand the added in storyline we get in this book with the family member. I genuinely don't know where the author was trying to go with that. And why was Callum involved in the way he was? Wasn't he like the leader of the resistance? Wasn't he the enemy? Who was allowing him? Who was allowing him to be in Kit's ear all the time? I don't understand. And I'm gonna flip back to Kai and Pei for a minute because there's a big revelation with Pei and her father's journals. And I kind of don't want to read the third book because I have a feeling that the author is discovering a very popular YA trope that if you've been reading fantasy for any length of time, you are very familiar with this trope and honestly probably a little tired of it. And I have a feeling that's exactly where it's going, but I'm still very confused as to what Callum's role was and also how did he get himself into that role, as well as why include Kit's POV when it literally added nothing to the story, as well as that extra storyline with the family member. I don't get it. There were a lot of things that were like not making sense in this book. The ending was also very ridiculous. It was over the top. It was very melodramatic and it was very unnecessary. The author is trying so hard to keep this love triangle alive and I don't understand. Something else that also really bothered me was, and this isn't, I'm gonna mark this as not a spoiler in my opinion because we all kind of knew it was coming. Kai and Pei finally kiss in this book. And the way the author wrote it, it genuinely felt like she just gave it to us to just give it to us. Because I think a lot of us complained that there was absolutely nothing in Powerless besides banter and some light touching, that we were just like, what? So then in Reckless, I think the author wanted to acknowledge our feelings on the subject and gave us the kiss, but did it so poorly. I'm sorry. I just think she did it so poorly. I think it could have been handled a lot better, and making us wait a whole book for that to then just kind of be like, well, here you go. There you go. Felt really crummy. as a reader, and I really didn't like that. And I will say this book is still not spicy. There's some kissing, but that's kind of it. Like Kai and Pei don't really go anywhere beyond that, which is fine because they are young. Pei is almost 18. She keeps alluding to the fact that she's almost 18 instead of just saying she's 17. And I believe Kai is 19. So they're still young. They have teen in their age. I'm fine with what the author gave us. I just don't like how she presented it to us. I feel like she could have done it differently. I don't know. I feel like I'm about to start rambling, so I'm gonna leave it there with everything with the characters because the characters really, really ran this story. Oh, also, speaking of characters, but I completely forgot about this point. Somehow, I don't know, I kind of think my brain erased it from my memory to save me from feeling angry all over again about it. We're introduced to this sort of like camp thing in this book, which explains what happens when elites and ordinaries have families and they have children, and how sometimes the power just kind of sputters in the children because one parent is ordinary and one parent is an elite. And it just felt like another thing that was so half-baked. And the resistance, again, conveniently showing up halfway through the book. What is the point of the resistance? Like, can we just let it go? Okay, can we just drop it? Like, because I swear, if I read the third book and the resistance shows up halfway through it, I'm just gonna stop reading. I'm just gonna DNF it. So if I do a reading vlog for the third book and that happens, we're not finishing the book. Unless someone can convince me, we're not finishing the book. So anyway, I can feel myself getting mad. So I'm gonna leave it there and let's go on to final kind of overall thoughts. All right, so all in all, wanted to like this book a lot more than I actually did. There were a lot of things that were so repetitive. This book was so romance heavy, and I just kind of wanted more substance. And I'm not saying that Kai and Pei needed to have like spicy scenes and needed to like really turn the heat up. The repetitiveness nature that they were kind of just circling the drain with each other was really exhausting, and it was really annoying. And by the end of the book, with the declaration from Kit, I just don't understand what was the point of giving us this book with such a heavy-handed romance between Kai and Pei to then put Kit back in the mix, or even act like Kit had never left the mix. Like, it really doesn't make sense. I really don't like love triangles as it is, and this one just got so much more complicated for what? But there were some things I did enjoy. I really enjoyed the banter between Pei and Kai. Kai has some really great one-liners, and the boy is such a flirt. He is such a flirt. And if there's anything I like, it is a shameless flirt because, like I said, it's mostly Pei, and I'm trying to be understanding, but I'm struggling. Because if Kai, who has also had a lot of like trauma and trouble, can put those things aside to acknowledge his feelings for Pei, why can't Pei? And like I said, I am hesitant about the third book just because, if I'm being honest, it's gonna sound harsh, but this book was such a flop for me. Like, it was so much messier than the first book. There were so many things that were thrown in that made no sense whatsoever. And I feel like, again, the author's just doing it for this like added drama factor or fantasy factor or intrigue factor, and I really hate it. Like, I really hate it. Like, for another example would be the fact that the world building was kind of expanded in this book. In Powerless, because we are set in the trials in Ilya, we don't leave Ilya. We know that there are 3 surrounding kingdoms, Dor, and 2 others that I forget. One you have to cross the sea to get to, but that's kind of all we know. We know that ordinaries try to make it through the desert to get there, and that's kind of it. And so even though the world was expanded a little bit in this book, nothing was truly like explained, and the things that were explained were answers from the first book. Answer first book questions in first book. Answer second book questions in second book. Like, am I asking too much? Am I being unreasonable? You can tell me. I know sometimes I get a little dramatic. You can tell me if I'm being unreasonable. But I just feel like it was so much more all over the place than the first book. And I don't know, because personally, I enjoyed the romance between Kai and Pei. But then by the end of the book, it's just kind of like, well, where is it going to go now? So I don't know. The ending of the book was by far the worst part of this book. I don't know who Kit thinks he is, okay? Genuinely, I don't. I don't know why Callum is in his ear the way he is. I don't know why a lot of things in this book don't make sense the more you think about it. It's like Powerless. The more you think about it, the less it makes sense. But all in all, I didn't really have a good time. I feel so mean. I'm sorry I'm laughing. I genuinely feel so mean. I did not like this book. I genuinely don't know if I want to read the third book in the series. Like this book was so bad to me. And when I finished it, I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I think if I'm being honest, the more time that I've had to sit with the story, I would probably give it a 2.75 out of 5 stars because I really did not like it. I'm sorry. Like I could see that the effort was there, but the execution again was just so bad. It was so bad. I'm so sorry. Like if you love this series and you love these books, like more power to you. Like I'm so happy that you enjoy them. They're just not for me and I'm so sorry. But anyway, that's kind of all I've got. Like I said, this series so far, I just don't think it's for me between the writing, between what's happening with the plot, between some of the stuff with the characters, besides, you know, some of just like the tropes that are going on, and I don't really think they're being done that well, and some things just feel added into the mix just to like keep us entertained, I don't know, to hold our interest. So, like I said, this series, I don't think it's for me. But like I said, if you love this series, then I'm very happy that you love it because we all like different things. There are some books that I detest that other people love. So, it's okay. We're all different. With that being said, I'm going to leave my rating at 3-ish stars out of 5 stars for Reckless by Lauren Roberts because I don't really want to be constantly changing my rating around. That's it. That's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, I do have a non-spoilers version where I go a little bit deeper into the book as I'm reading it. And I definitely got a little crazy at some points because this book was a roller coaster. And there were a lot of times that I wanted to get off the roller coaster. So with that being said, as always, thank you so much for watching. And I absolutely cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye.